Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pole Position Podcast. I'm Henry Eccles, Sports News Blitz F1 writer.
I'm Alexandra. I'm a Formula One contributor for Sports News Blitz.
And I'm Nicole Powell, and I'm a deputy content editor for Sports News Blitz.
And we're here to talk about the final race, to preview the final race, and talk a little bit about the penultimate race as well, Qatar, because it all comes down to this. It's the three-way title fight between Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, and championship leader Lando Norris. And I suppose the first place to start is with Qatar, and what on earth were McLaren doing with that strategy? On lap 7, when the safety car came out, everyone except Esteban Ocon and the McLarens decided to pit, whilst Piastri had a good P1 lead. Norris was running in P3, and ultimately they messed it up and they finished P2 and P4 behind Max Verstappen. And guys, the only question I think anybody has on their mind after that was why.
Yeah, it was a bit questionable, especially considering the stakes now that we're like into the end of the final races of the season. Because McLaren they've had the advantage with the Drivers' Championship since the season began, and we had a really comfortable gap between Oscar and Lando and Max. We didn't even think Max would be in this talk at some point, but here we are. Second last race of the season, Piastri looks like he's back, to what he was early in the season. Lando isn't quite there yet, but he's still close enough to keep himself in the fights, because again, he's the one who had the advantage going into the final races of the season. And you'd think that this is the one race where McLaren had put everything into making sure that they get maximum points and keep Max behind, but that's not what they did. It was really, really dumb, because Lando could have won in that race. He could have taken the title. Piastri could, if it wasn't going to be Lando, Oscar and Lando would both still be able to be in really good positions for Abu Dhabi. But McLaren just said, you know what, Max, we want a real fight in the final race of the season. So here you go. You guys can go pit, and we'll just wait a bit. It was a bit strange. It's quite strange.
I think it was disappointing. I think considering that Lando Norris had gone into the weekend basically like. In my head, if I was him, I would have been like, look, this is a surefire win. The Drivers' Championship is going to be mine by the end of this weekend, even if my teammate does really well, which he did. We've seen a glimpse, I think, of the Piastri that was in the earlier races of the season. He seems to have found his groove back with the car. It's unfortunate that it's taken it to the penultimate race for him to come back. He did well in the sprint. I just think it was baffling to watch it. And I think it was discussed after the race that McLaren had factored in the fact that they wouldn't be the only team staying out. I think they should have factored in the fact that if they were the only team that stayed out, how would that play in? Because they just played right into Red Bull's hands. And I just think at this stage of a title fight, they've not won since Lewis Hamilton in 2008. How could they throw away such a comfortable win, I think, in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bizarre strategy, because you talked about how, they would have to, surely they would have to factor in the idea that everyone else would be pitting. But I mean, I just in all of the commentary before and since, it was also a hasten to add that it was a 57 lap race that had a two stop rule, essentially, because the Pirelli mandated a 25 lap limit due to their concerns over tires. And do the maths. If you're on lap 7 and there's a safety car, it's the obvious thing to do, and everybody was going to pit. There was the only reason Ocon didn't pit is because he had his own issues with. I think he pitted previously or something, or that he was picking up a penalty, or he hadn't done his penalty. I don't know. The whole sequence of events was all over the place there. But if he had his race sort of normal at the start, he would have pitted too. It was just it was unbelievable, and for all of the talk that McLaren have put out since Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, talking about that even in the race they were talking about, oh well, we have flexibility over everybody now. Like, it was papaya rules really in action. It was the fact that they didn't want to pit one or the other, and be seen to favour one over the other, and that's the story of their season, isn't it? We've seen it. I mean, we've spoken about Piastri being back on form, and it is such a shame that he is that he's had the win taken away on what was a really good weekend, because he's come back to form pretty much since a slump that happened after Monza, which is another papaya rules in action race, and really wrecked his confidence. So yeah, it's just it's a complete mess. But I am looking forward to the last race. They've helped make it a bit more exciting.
Yeah, and speaking of papaya rules, Lando himself asked why not just double stack us? Even if Lando would have lost more time from that, at the end of the day, you still don't give Max a very easy road
Yeah.
to the win. Because let's say if they still lost too much time off of doing a double stack, they'd still probably be close enough to Max to do all of that because they'd be more or less on the same strategies. But they completely threw it away when they decide that it's better off just leaving it to, hopefully another safety car, another incident that would just help them rather
Yeah.
than just, choosing a driver or choosing to double stack them.
And
I
also,
think
like,
that's
Piastri was the sorry, Alexandra.
You go.
Piastri's the lead driver as well, so in those situations, what has happened and what normally happens is the driver in front sort of calls the shots in those situations. And to be fair, it also does surprise me that both drivers are kind of going along with it as well. That there hasn't been a lot of disobedience in that aspect. I suspect there may be next week if anything happens that might anything in terms of team orders, but yeah, that surprised me that they didn't at least pit Oscar, because he's the lead driver, he's P1, just give he was going to win. Verstappen wasn't going to catch him because of just how difficult it was to overtake in Qatar. Lando, yeah, double stacking might have hurt his race, but he should have qualified further ahead then. That's how it's always been.
Rather sacrifice just one driver than both. Because sacrificing both does not help any case. It just completely ruins everything.
I know, but we've heard comments from Zach Brown being like, I would rather throw away the championship than prioritize either driver. And I think in the sort of up and down world of Formula One, where nothing's guaranteed, nothing's taken for granted, it can all be taken away from you in one race. We've seen that with a double disqualification, with them crashing into each other. Nothing is set in stone. I think McLaren really needs to get it together and decide, each weekend which driver is going to be the priority, whether it's the one that's leading in the championship or whether it's the one that's qualified further ahead, because otherwise they're never going to win a drivers' championship. And they've not won since Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton's been in 2 different teams since then. He's been in Mercedes and he's now in Ferrari, and McLaren still haven't won a drivers' championship despite winning the Constructors' Championship this year and coming pretty close in previous years. I sort of don't know where their priorities are. I don't know what they're trying to do, and it's quite baffling to watch it all play out, and you do start to feel for the drivers. I mean, you saw how dejected Norris looked after the Qatar Grand Prix, that he was just immediately out of there as soon as he could. Piastri said he was speechless after the race, and I think we're starting to see the cracks. And I think the fact that we're only starting to see it now is good for McLaren in terms from like a PR standpoint, because if it had happened much earlier in the season, I think they would have had a media disaster on their hands.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Just in terms of how it all looks, and obviously the optics are really important, and I want to sort of tie that to Zach Brown's comments. He talked about how yeah, we prefer to hand it to Verstappen essentially if we try our best and we stick to our philosophy, and if it does end up that Verstappen wins, then so be it. I mean, listen, I do understand the idea of letting your two drivers race and wanting to be as you feel that that's the best way to be competitive or entertaining, or sort of, I suppose, selling yourself as an exciting brand of racing. I get all of that, but at the same time, fans really only care about the drivers' standings. I mean, yes, the constructors are important, and investors love constructors. The teams themselves love the constructors, and the constructors suddenly becomes important whenever there's not so much to fight for in the drivers. But we all love the driver standings, and that's what we remember 20 years down the line. Um, and I just think, yeah, it's twofold. I mean, I wonder how Norris and Piastri would have reacted to Brown's comments and when he said that, and then also, yeah, as I said, it doesn't help the brand either if you throw away a driver standings wins. You can be the constructors champions all you like, but it's not a good look.
Yeah, and a few races ago, I don't know how many races ago, we talked about how Toto Wolff made some comments regarding how to handle having two drivers in the fight for the title. And I think what Zach Brown has, I think his mistake has been um, that has led to someone else getting closer and closer. And you'd think that with Max getting closer, becoming more of a threat, and it'd be like, okay, now we can't just let you guys just, have it your way. We have to be smart about it because at the end of the day, Red Bull have caught up, and Max is the kind of person who will, if it's down to the wire, he'll be there. He did it against Lewis Hamilton. He managed to take it all the way to the final race of the season, and he's done exactly that for McLaren despite being nowhere at some point this season. We thought it was Piastri at some point. We thought if Norris was going to take it, it would just mean that, you know, Papaya rules have got into a bad place, and they did. And also, Piastri had a really bad run of races. But now that Max has been involved for pretty much the second half of the season, you'd think that McLaren would be like, no, we need to be smart about this because Red Bull will be smart about that. We know Red Bull know how to play their strategies right, and they have been in recent title fights. The last title fight they were in that was real was against Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, and they've won all these titles since then with Max. And that's not the kind of person that you take as a joke. That's a real threat. And I think Zach Brown deciding that it's better to not prioritize a single driver than to just give the title to Max is so odd because F1 is so competitive and it's all about the fine margins and it's so tight. And he's just this was these two titles were sorry, when we started the season, these two titles were theirs, both of them. It was so obvious that both titles would go to McLaren, to one of the McLarens, and the constructors would go to McLaren. But now it's looking like Max could easily take it if McLaren continue letting papaya rules just ruin their races and their chances at the title that was very much guaranteed at one point this season, at many points this season.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at exactly where Verstappen was, he was 104 points behind mid-season. That's still a little bit close, but it's still a comfortable gap for the drivers in front. To now go into the final race where he's split the McLaren drivers and now has a real shot at getting his next championship. He's, like you said, Nicole, he is the current reigning champ. He has won multiple times, and Red Bull prioritize him because they know how to play the game right. It's like you win the constructors, fair enough, but you still have to prioritize the driver because, like Henry said, that's what people come to Formula One for. You don't stay for the teams. You come for the drivers, and you stay for the drivers and their rivalry and their competitiveness and their tenacity and their individual performance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it would, the way I see it, I see Max taking this title at this point because just, McLaren have made it so hard to believe in them, even when their drivers are really like good. Even when Piastri has a really good weekend, even when Norris has a really good weekend, when it comes down to who's playing their cards right, it's never been McLaren.
No.
It's Red Bull. So it would be such a shame for McLaren to witness Max taking that title, but it's really looking like it's the most possible thing to happen because look at Qatar, we didn't see that coming. We didn't see McLaren letting papaya rules get in the way at such a crucial point, but it did. So I think generally I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bull are very confident about taking the driver's title as well because McLaren have practically handed it to them.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen knows what it's like to go to Abu Dhabi knowing that he can win a world title. McLaren, they don't. And obviously they're constructors champions and for 2 years in a row, but drivers is different. It's just it's a different sort of. I think it's a different kind of pressure because you're not only you're. I suppose yes, as I said, teams love the constructors championship obviously, but then drivers you're dealing with so much more emotion. You're only dealing kind of with the emotions that I'm generalizing, but you're really dealing with the emotions of two people here, and it's where mistakes can be made. But yeah, I mean obviously we talk about McLaren handing Verstappen this the opportunity at least, but I mean he's just been unbelievable this season. I think we said 104 points behind at the Dutch Grand Prix. Halfway through the season, that's not a huge gap. Like I think halfway through, but it's never been done. Like it's never actually been achieved. And yeah, it's just some of the drives, even early in the season, like Suzuka, the dominance in at Monza. It's just unbelievable what he's been able to achieve in such a tricky car as well. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before or not, but the one thing that I'll never get out of my head is one of the practice sessions at Silverstone. Verstappen's just wrestling with his car, kind of like Leclerc actually this weekend. But it was a complete boat, and I think he put it on. Did he put it on pole that weekend? He did. He put it on pole at Silverstone that weekend, I think. It's just the way that they're able to turn weekends around, and that's another crucial thing for Abu Dhabi is that this weekend isn't a sprint, and I think that's a big thing for Red Bull because they seem to struggle on sprint weekends a little bit more. They're able to turn it around, but they with that more practice time, they get to I think fix the issues that they come into the weekend with. So that'll be big. One potential scenario that I can't get out of my head is if Verstappen is winning and Piastri's either P2, P3 and Lando's P4, and Piastri hasn't got much of a chance of catching Verstappen. What does he do? What did McLaren want him to do? What does he do? Oh, it's very exciting.
It is exciting. It is very exciting. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry. Sorry.
Under container excitement.
Yeah, it's making me all breathless and everything. Speaking of constructors, Williams managed to solidify themselves as a P5 win for this year, which I think is great considering where they've been. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Sainz's podium at the weekend was another smooth operation. yeah, the way he's been able to turn around his season has been great as well. You know, regularly being outscored by Alex Albon in the first half of the season. I think he's outscored not only Albon in the second half, but in the last 3 weekends he's equaled Ferrari, which is obviously interesting. But yeah, I mean, he's just been. I think it was always going to happen for Sainz at Williams, because he's obviously they're going to build everything around him and Albon, and there's not really there's not that sort of, it's not the same environment as Ferrari. It's a bit more, I think, yeah, driver friendly, let's say, and yeah, he performed really well at the start in Qatar, got away well. I think he was on the cleaner side of the track, so that helps. But he had the pace and he had the awareness during the race as well to kind of know where he was and know when to push. And that's exactly what I know Williams have been around forever, but we think of Williams as kind of like a new young team at the moment since James Vowles arrived. He's just the perfect guy to steer that ship. And yeah, it was always going to take a little bit of time to get used to things. New engine as well, you know, moving from Ferrari to Mercedes, knew everything really. And he's just performed, yeah, really well in the second half of the season. And I'm so happy for him and James Vowles, because that man, I believe in that man.
Yeah. And I think it's so funny how the conversation has changed about Williams, even just on this podcast, because we spend like every episode talking about how they're either there or they're not. So this weekend we'll be like, yeah, Williams actually did a good job. Then the next weekend we're like, oh, well, Williams were not anywhere. They were nowhere near any fights. So it's been so crazy to see that. And at least now we can end the year saying that Williams have definitely made a progress and can end the season on a high and go into the new era, you know, with some hope that they could be in a proper fight, because they're doing well so far. But hopefully next year will be a bit more consistent, because one thing that has remained true, at least until now, is that we never have both drivers having a good weekend at the same time. It's either Albon or Sainz. For the past few, it's been Sainz, but we never have the two drivers up there. So hopefully there'll be a lot more consistency for Williams next year, because I think James Vowles again, I also really believe in that man. So yeah, hopefully they can get into this new era with like confidence and more consistency. And you know, Williams is a very successful team. They carry so much heritage in the sport, so it would be really nice to see them actually get closer and closer to where they used to be, you know.
100%.
Sure thing. And I think obviously Baku will always be sort of the most special podium for Williams this year, because of just, you know, how long it had been before and the fact that it was Sainz's first podium and whatnot. But I think this one was so much more, I guess, impressive but important, because Qatar, going into the weekend, nobody was expecting Williams to do well at Qatar, because they've done really poorly in the past. And I think James Vowles said that Qatar last year was easily their worst, or one of their worst races last year. But just, you know, track characteristics, they don't suit Qatar. Medium to high speed, sort of like Spain. They don't suit those tracks. But they were on it, and that's really good. I mean, we've talked throughout the season about them holding off until 2026 and that being the focus. And I think maybe some people might get it sort of misconstrued that, oh well, actually they've jumped the gun or something, that they've really steamed ahead with 2025. But that's not the case. They're not doing anything for 2026, and that is such a big sort of thumbs up for Williams, because it means operationally, at least, they are behaving like a maybe not a top team, but definitely top of that midfield. They just need all of the parts to come together for a fight, basically, next year or the year after. I think Williams are the most exciting team on the grid right now. I can't wait for 2026 just to see, you know, where they go.
Yeah. Henry thinks that Williams are the most exciting team, and I think now we can talk about the most confusing team, Ferrari. Yeah,
Yeah.
just Williams. Just above Williams. They were second at a point for a long time earlier
Yep.
this season. Now they are just above Williams, which is quite shocking, but also really not shocking.
I think, like, when you think of, I mean, Ferrari and Formula One have always gone hand in hand since the very beginning, since the start of Formula One, and I think that maybe gets in the way of them improving their performance because they're so stuck in traditional. They're still so stuck in the past. They're still stuck on their past glory. They're not actually looking further ahead. I mean, you've got Charles Leclerc, who was perhaps one of the most exciting young talents coming into the sport. Everyone was like, oh, what's he going to do, especially at Ferrari? And the fact that it's just sort of trailed off, especially this season. And then you had Lewis Hamilton coming in, perhaps one of the greatest drivers in the sport that we've ever seen and will ever see, and that he's coming out of every weekend and going into every weekend so dejected and so pessimistic about everything. I don't think speaks very well for Ferrari's future. I mean, they're really going to have to turn it around to even have a chance of hitting that top midfield. I mean, they were so close last year, and they, instead of continuing on that trajectory and going further and pushing themselves, they seem to have just gone right down the opposite way. And I just think, as a Lewis Hamilton fan, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch such a great driver struggle with a team that has a bad car, has terrible strategy, has operational issues internally, and a million other reasons that they can't make anything work. It's like they have a million different pieces of a jigsaw and they don't know how to make them fit.
Yeah, and it's really hard to blame the drivers despite the CEO blaming the drivers, because when you look back at just recent history, you don't get prime Alonso, prime Vettel, prime Raikkonen, and all of a sudden they're not competitive enough to win a title or like regularly win races. You don't get Lewis Hamilton, you don't get Charles Leclerc and just struggle. It's obviously not the drivers. It's clearly very internal. Is everything. I mean, the drivers keep changing, but what's really staying is more of like the core of Ferrari, and that just might be the problem. And Lewis has talked about how he's gonna try and like really implement like new ideas into the team to help them improve. And that's a man I would take advice from, because again, he's the most successful driver in the sport. Why would you not listen to him? And you have Leclerc, who has decided he is going to devote his whole entire life to Ferrari. So these are people that Ferrari should do their best to provide with the right car, with the right environment, because you don't get drivers like Alonso and Raikkonen and Vettel, and then you get Hamilton and Leclerc, and you're still just, you're not there. It's so obviously not the drivers. It's so hard to blame the drivers despite the people up there saying, no, the drivers need to do better and they need to be more positive. It's pretty hard to be positive in an environment like that.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want them to say after a race weekend as per as the one that they had in Qatar? And Qatar was bad. Like, even for how bad Ferrari had been, it was really bad, because I think most weekends for Ferrari there's at least one redeeming quality somewhere. Charles got 7 podiums, which I think is actually really good considering where they are. And Hamilton's had some really good recovery drives on Sundays. Like Imola comes to mind. There was another one as well, I can't quite remember, but he's had Spa, that was it. But yeah, that they're just. I mean, Nicole, you talked about Hamilton wanting to get things implemented. Post Qatar, he was talking about his document. He has a big document apparently where he's got loads of ideas and complaints and feedback or whatever. But he talked about And he talked about, those things in the document. He said that, they have to be implemented. It's not going to, it wouldn't be I think he might have said it wouldn't be the hardest thing to do or something like that. He sort of said that these things are almost like they're basics. But whether or not they will, his calls will be listened to is another matter. You get the sense, and that's a huge shame. And I've said, we've talked about it before. I also think, to go back, actually, Alexandra, what you were talking about in terms of tradition and being stuck in their ways, I think they need to at least have some kind of hub in the UK, just because that's where the majority of people that work in Formula One are based. It's a big reason, for example, why Adrian Newey didn't go to Ferrari. He didn't want to uproot. It's a big reason potentially why Christian Horner won't go to Ferrari, among other things as well, because of just how they are structurally. But I think they need to get with the times. We've said all this before, but it's just blatantly obvious now.
Yeah, 100%. So how do we think Abu Dhabi's going to go? How do you hope it's going to go? How do you want it to go? What do you think will actually happen? I mean, Nicole's touched on it a little bit, thinking that Verstappen's going to take the win. And I don't know that I disagree with her, because it's Max Verstappen we're talking about.
Yeah, and McLaren haven't really given us much to, believe in. Yeah, so.
I don't think Lando Norris is going to win this race.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying. I don't know. That's the way I feel.
No, I agree with it. When you look at his performance, the past weekend at Qatar, it was very sort of middle of the road in comparison to Piastri. It wasn't a bad drive, but it wasn't a great drive, and it certainly wasn't a race-winning drive, either in qualifying or even in any of the sprint. I just think if McLaren want Lando Norris to get this championship, they're going to have to scrap papaya rules and really pull their strategy out of the bag.
Yeah, I really hope that whoever qualifies best, whether it's Norris or Piastri this weekend, that McLaren are like, okay, so it's Piastri who's qualified better than Norris. We will prioritize Piastri all through the weekend. If it's Norris, it's Norris. I just hope they can stick to that, because that's where the problems start, is when they can't pick and choose who they want to, help. Because that's been the problem. Yeah, and Verstappen was just there. Kind of the way George Russell is always in the right place at the right time. That's just Max patiently waiting for Max to just fumble.
Yeah.
There are just so many things that could happen, so many permutations, so many hypothetical situations that you can see coming true. Last year those three qualified in the top three, and Piastri and Verstappen both had a collision on the first corner. What if something like that happens again? What if something like what I said earlier happened, where you've got Piastri, you've got maybe Verstappen, let's say Russell, Piastri, Norris. Norris can't repeat Qatar. He needs a podium if Verstappen wins. So what happens there? Does Piastri... Right, do we think either of the McLaren drivers actually listen to team orders this weekend? Because they do listen, they do what McLaren want them to do, but do they actually do it this weekend?
I mean,
they do not.
Piastri's managed by Mark Webber, so that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. We all know this sort of attitude of Mark Webber. I wonder if we're going to start to see a glimpse of that in Piastri. And I think personally, from a selfish point of view, Piastri needs to do that. He needs to say, screw team orders, I'm here for my win.
Yeah.
Because McLaren doesn't care about either of the drivers winning. You need, as the driver, you've got to have faith in yourself. And we've seen it with Max Verstappen, and he's still at Red Bull.
Yeah. But then, like McLaren and Red Bull, they sort of operate a bit differently, and also, you know, Verstappen's obviously just on his own up there as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, as well, that they have to go into work the next day. You know, like
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing too. Like, you know, they. Oh.
Yeah, sorry I cashed into you. It was just a silly little mistake.
Yeah, it's.
I mean,
What,
look
you know,
at
like,
Rosberg and Hamilton now.
Yeah, Rosberg and Hamilton.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah, Mercedes.
I can see Piastri backing Norris up if they're in the lead. It's so many things.
Yeah, I think, like, realistically, I think if McLaren did turn to Piastri and go, look, Norris is leading in this race, you're not doing so well, how can we maximize it so that Norris does well? I think that could happen, but in the back of my head, all I can think about is the comments that Piastri has made, that they have had this conversation before, and it was a very brief conversation, and Piastri went no.
But and then also, like, he's got, you know, if he's not happy with sort of the situation at McLaren, if he feels like he is a number 2 and that they're favouring Norris, then obviously there's that natural feeling of, screw you, I'm gonna do what I want, and I'm gonna win this championship, or I'm gonna stop him from winning this championship, or whatever. And yeah, they have to go into work the next day. But also, if he actually wants out, it's not a good look as well. No. It's not a good look for him to be, you know, carrying out any kind of shenanigans. And you know.
It's actually so complicated, because again, right now all the seats are confirmed for next year, so it's not like he can just, you know, say, no, I'm done with you guys, screw you, I have felt like a number 2 driver. Which, if he did say that, or if he indirectly say that, I would agree, because I feel like he's more or less been the number 2 even when he's leading the championship. But it's so complicated, because it's not like he's guaranteed a seat anywhere else, especially at a top team, anytime soon. But I also see Mark Webber sitting down with him and telling him, you need to not let them make you a number 2 driver. So the problem with that is, the problem with them being stubborn this weekend, especially on Piastri's side, is you have to go through next season of this team. You also don't want to end the season on like a really bad note.
Yeah.
You have next season confirmed. Do you want to, if you guys are still fast enough to compete for both titles, you want some harmony. But again, this is McLaren's own doing, because if McLaren were just clear from the start, we could have avoided all of this and any potential teammate drama and all that. But this is like very self-inflicted in terms of the team. So it's a very nasty situation.
You put it on the head that if they had just done it at the very beginning of the season, they wouldn't have this issue. If they'd just gone into the season being like, Lando Norris is our number 1 driver, Piastri is our number 2, Norris is priority, that's who we're gunning to win the championship. I think it's almost, from Piastri's perspective, I wonder if it's almost a sort of, oh, I am actually, like, I'm a good driver and I'm competing with my teammate who they've been gunning for a good few seasons, and now they've sort of given me that glimpse of, I'm competitive and I'm at the top, and I'm, you know, I think Piastri's drive for a lot of people this season is something that we were very excited about, and that it was almost unexpected, because I think the narrative that McLaren have sort of spun over the years is that Norris is their little prodigy, that he's who they're putting all their time and energy in, and that a second driver is just that, a second driver. And the fact that Piastri came into this season and sort of blew the expectations for him out the water, I think hasn't helped McLaren in being able to prioritize one or the other, because they now have 2 drivers that are on equal standing. One who maybe feels like now's their time for a championship. They've been in Formula One for a good few seasons, whereas they've got this new up and comer who's been in it much, much less than another driver, but is now competing at the same level.
Yeah, but also like I think, I mean, it was all in a way I sympathise with McLaren because it was always going to happen whenever Piastri was signed. I think everybody could kind of see it coming, but just that whole situation whenever they did sign him, it was obviously a bit of a mess with Alpine, but. And they couldn't if they had that opportunity, they had to go for it, I think, as well. But you could see it coming, because Piastri is like a serious driver, like P3, P2 champion on the points. Like that's Charles Leclerc, that's George Russell, Verstappen kind of territory. Like that, yeah. That's special. But yeah, I think I don't know what they do. But the thing is, I've also seen this go about a few times, the suggestion that if Piastri did somehow win, and it's going to be tricky for Piastri to win this title now. He's 16 points behind. He needs a lot to go his way, I think. But if he did, imagine if he goes on the radio saying that's not bad for a number 2 driver.
Oh my God.
I would love
it. Would just explode.
That would be crazy.
I would love it. Love a bit of drama like that. Oh, can only dream.
I've always wanted him to win this title since he won that race, his first race this year. So now I think because of that, just the thought of him, the idea that he could say it. So just because of that, I really want him to win.
Mark Webber is his manager.
Mark Webber is who's coaching him.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so intense.
I think if Max Verstappen wins it, he's going to say thank you, McLaren.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Knowing Max, he'll sneak that in somewhere.
He'll say something.
Thanks to everyone at Red Bull and thanks to everyone at McLaren.
Yeah. Another thing, actually, another interesting sort of subplot, if you can call it that, is that this is the first 3-way title decider at Abu Dhabi since 2010, between Mark Webber, Sebastian Vettel, and Fernando Alonso. And do either of you know who? Well, actually, firstly, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do know that it was Ferrari's strategy that messed Alonso up that day. Do either of you know who Fernando Alonso's race engineer was on that day?
Do not tell me it's Ricardo Adami, because no way.
No, not Ricardo Adami.
No.
I'm pretty sure he's not old enough for that.
Yeah, I was like, nah, it can't be him.
Who is it?
It was Andrea Stella.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's crazy.
That's all I'm saying. Messed up a strategy in 2010, Andrea. Don't do it again.
Don't do it again.
Yeah, but who won that year? Was it not Vettel in P3?
Vettel,
yeah.
Vettel crossed the line and he had to wait for all the way down to Alonso.
That was the just you wait sunshine, wasn't it?
Yeah, just you wait sunshine. So he waited for quite some time for a lot of drivers to cross the line. And yeah, so that was basically Ferrari being Ferrari and all.
15 years ago.
15 years ago. It's
crazy.
Just some things never change.
No.
Alonso's still here.
Yeah.
And Alonso's still here.
But also, actually, just one more point. Nicole, you made that you talked about, like you said, if we're still competing next season, talking about McLaren, if they're still up there, that's another thing as well. This could be their only chance for a while. Either of them, Piastri or Norris, you just don't know. So it's and like the same could be said for Verstappen, I suppose. But if Verstappen's not having fun in 2026, he said himself, he might leave the sport if the 2026 car is just rubbish for him to drive, or he'll just go to whoever's at the top, and that won't be a difficult move to make, I don't think, whether it's Mercedes or Aston Martin or whoever. But this is huge for those two.
And I think that's like part of what Formula One is. You've got to, every time you see that gap, you've got to take it. And McLaren haven't taken that racing gap, as it were. They haven't, they've had so many chances to have the Drivers' Championship sorted, cinched. It's theirs. Their Drivers' Championship 2025. They've had so many opportunities to just call it once and for all. And papaya rules have just
messed
up them constantly.
Yeah, and that's not to say
era of Formula One, so you don't know where you're going to be for the next few years.
Yeah.
You really don't know. So if you have a chance to, take a title now, take it. Don't waste it. But that's not. It's like McLaren just they don't want it.
Yeah. So to finish up, should we do the top 3, top 4, top 5?
Let's do top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, who's going first?
I need something.
I need a minute. Hang on.
Yeah.
I think George Russell's going to be up there. He's just going to, as he does, just sneak his way in.
He'll fancy being up there.
He'll just be like, you know what? Maybe it would be nice. He'll just pop in. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got a third, just being like, hey guys, you know what? I fancied a podium today. But I definitely think he's going to be in the top 5. I think realistically, looking at Qatar, Verstappen's going to win.
Yeah.
I think Verstappen's going to win, and it's going to be Piastri, Norris 2-3. Realistically.
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, I was going to say that. I think it's going to be. I don't. To be fair, qualifying could be a different story, but I think it'll end up being. As I said, I don't think Norris is going to win. I think either Verstappen or Piastri will win.
Yeah.
I can see Piastri spending a bit of time holding Norris up at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go. You know what? I'll go Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, Russell.
Okay. I think Piastri is going to win the race as well. But and going off of what Qatar was like, because it's basically what the previous races were like before Piastri went on like his, bad run of form. I think Norris is going to struggle in qualifying, and because of that, I think he's going to also have a bad race start out of just sheer panic. And going off history.
Is that Lando now though? Is that?
I don't know. He kind of
feels like he's passed.
Took it from him last weekend, so I feel like maybe whoever is starting next to him could take it again. So I don't know. I can actually see Norris out of the top 5.
I think it's a possibility. If we're looking at, I think it's a possibility that Norris would qualify outside the top 10. Outside the top.
Not
top 10. My God.
Sorry, top 5. Top 5.
So I think he'll either qualify out of the top 5 and probably have a bad start, or he might have a good qualifying but have a poor start and lose crucial positions, and that can make him finish outside of the top 5.
Yeah.
But I think Piastri is going to win the race, and I think Verstappen and maybe Russell will be on the podium with him.
Yeah. Let's say I think top 3 then is going to be Verstappen, Piastri, and Russell.
Yeah. Hopefully Piastri at the top.
Hopefully Piastri, but I think realistically it's going to be Verstappen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Let's see what happens on Sunday. It'll be a good one for sure. Whatever happens.
And 4th and 5th. No one gave their predictions for 4th and 5th.
Pardon?
No one gave their predictions for 4th and 5th, P4 and P5.
Oh.
Sorry.
I said Russell P4 and then P5. Kimi.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna say Sainz P5.
Okay.
And Norris P4.
I think Kimi P4. P5. I don't even know. P5 could just, science, maybe it's another surprise driver from a midfield team. Maybe Ferrari, maybe Leclerc. I don't know, but I'm not gonna place any bets on Ferrari this weekend. So I think P5 would be like.
We've done a lot of that this season. We've done a lot
Yeah,
of maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, just enough. Not this time around.
Delusionally hopeful, I think, for Ferrari at some point.
So I think P5 could be a bit of like a surprise factor.
Let's say it'd be great if it was Hadjar. I think that would be a nice end to the season.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be nice.
Speaking of Hadjar, we haven't addressed that
Big
big news yesterday. Yeah. Hadjar 2026 for Red Bull. What do we think?
Hopefully the curse is broken.
Yeah. Because I'm really scared for him. I don't know how it's gonna go, but I don't have much hope because it's not been looking good.
We all know what it's like to not knowing exactly what it's like to be in that seat, but we all know the trajectory of Red Bull's second driver.
Yeah.
But also 2026 clean slate. Verstappen doesn't have his print on that car as much as he does now. So, and Hadjar, I think it's sort of accepted that in terms of Red Bull's junior setup and Red Bull's plethora of drivers, the driver most similar to Verstappen is Hadjar in terms of his driving style. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And then obviously sad news about Yuki.
Yeah. I think it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't pretend to know what Red Bull are thinking. I think the fact that they've blocked him from going to other teams and then not even given him a seat in either of their Formula One's teams just isn't acceptable. But that's just my opinion.
I'm a big Yuki fan and a big Isack fan. So it's so bittersweet because I'm like, man, Yuki's gone. He doesn't have his seats. But I'm like, Isack deserves to drive for a big team. But again, Red Bull, ever since way back when, them and having two strong drivers just does not work out well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that. I've said this season that I would keep Yuki on for at least the start of 2026 at Red Bull, just because you don't know where that car is going to be. He's not gonna, as I said, same with Hadjar anyway, but Verstappen's not gonna have the influence over that car in the same way that Yuki arrived. He just arrived into a Verstappen team, a Verstappen car, whereas yes, they're going to build that 2026 car around what Verstappen wants, but it's not going to be it's not going to be this violent change that they all suffered at the start of the season. So that's a shame, but also I think Hadjar's been brilliant this season, so it'll be exciting. And also I think I'm not sure if Yuki was ever going to be the future of Red Bull anyway. So might as well make the change for this new cycle of regulations, especially because Verstappen's future is not. It's uncertain. He could easily end up at Mercedes in 27 or Aston Martin or whoever's at the top. So yeah, more exciting news, but obviously all eyes are on Abu Dhabi on Sunday.
Only time will tell this weekend, I think.
Yep. Well, that about does it, I think. Yeah. So let's hope for an exciting race on Sunday. Whatever you want to happen, whatever you think will happen, I'm sure something will happen.
Yes.
And yeah. Let's do this again next week and let's see what has happened.
Let's see who will be happy and who will not be happy.
Bye. We shall see. See you next week. Bye.